Hi, talking about getting the best out of coaching, how to work with a coach effectively. So welcome everyone. So for the next 30 minutes, it's all about coaching. But before we start, I'll just get Volker to introduce himself after I've introduced myself. So I'm Tanya Lee. I'm a coach working executive coaching within organisations, and I'm also an ICAF accredited coach supervisor. I'm passionate about coaching and was lucky enough to experience coaching, executive coaching, when I was in a senior position in an organisation, which is why I'm passionate about it and how it releases your potential. Volker, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, Tanya. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. So I've been coaching for many, many years. So I did my master practitioner in NLP. That's how it all started with me back in 2003, and DBM, Development of Behavior Models. I'm now a therapist and done lots of coaching courses over the years. I'm EQI qualified, so I assess emotional intelligence, something I'm very passionate about. So yeah, I've been involved in the space for many, many years. So yeah, let's talk coaching.
Let's talk coaching. We will, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat and we will address them at the end, just so it doesn't interrupt the flow. And I know there's sometimes a little bit of a lag. So you might be halfway through something and a question pops up. But I think it's first worth talking about what coaching actually is. Because we hear a lot of conversations about counselling, coaching, and mentoring. And they're three very distinctive things, but we tend to get them very mixed up when we talk about them. And I mean, how I understand it is counselling is really looking backwards and to the present, and it's about healing and resolving past issues. Coaching is very forward thinking. It's achieving goals and maximizing your potential. So it does look at the present and the future more than the past. And mentoring is for someone who has already done the job or done something very similar to you and is experience sharing and guidance based. And I think the ones that get mixed up most of all are coaching and mentoring. I don't know whether that's your thought as well, Volker.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, so if I say I do all of it, so I have a good view.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree. Therapy is, counseling is looking into the past, resolving childhood trauma, if I say most of the time, but it could be, anything else, anxiety and phobias, giving up smoking through hypnosis. So there are lots of applications, but it's working with your unconscious mind, really. And getting you to process things that have happened and making sense of the world. Mentoring, I agree, is more advising. It's more, sharing your own experience. And coaching sits somewhere in the middle, I'd say. And the interesting bit is, at least in my experience, so I work a lot with sales leaders. And when I work with sales leaders, it's a very fluid mentoring / coaching engagement, because I have so much experience in sales. I'm mentoring a lot, but then we also coach by looking into the future and getting the coachee to come up with their own ideas, and that's what coaching is about, right? Triggering things. And then I think coaching and therapy, you could almost say coaching is looking forward, therapy is looking backwards, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm personally not too fussed what people call me, as long as I can provide benefits. And you sometimes find coaches that have never had any therapy education and think they can be a therapist. And you don't really want to mix those two, to be honest. They're two different things.
You absolutely don't. And Volker, I think that's a really good point. If I'm ever in a situation where I feel I am not equipped, and it is down the therapy counselling, I will flag it immediately and signpost them to the right support. But I think it's really interesting you're talking about the fact that you wear many hats within that. I am definitely lead with coaching, but also will signpost if I'm ever going into mentoring.
Yeah.
And I worked with someone who had a really great, simple explanation. And I love this. A guy called Graham, who said, coaching is having the right questions for the coach's answers. And mentoring is having the right answers for the mentee's questions. And I love that simplicity.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would argue that coaching goes deeper.
Yeah.
Right. It's deeper than mentoring. But yeah, it can be so fluid, right? And some people get really hung up on the terms. I mean, what I like to do, and if I say I'm constantly struggling with that in my head, but I'm working very person-centered, right? So whatever the person needs in that moment. But the difficulty is you don't want to mix therapy, for instance, with mentoring or coaching. So you can't have this dual relationship. You can't be someone's therapist and coach at the same time.
No.
However, and that's where, if I say it's a fine line, you can bring elements of therapy into coaching, and you can bring tinsy elements of coaching into therapy. Probably more likely to bring therapy techniques into coaching than the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I think it's actually understanding for your client what they need.
Yeah.
So from a client is understanding what their end is in mind, because all three are around personal development. All three, counseling, coaching, mentoring, are around personal development. And sometimes you will need different things in your life at different times. So understanding why I want to work with a coach versus a mentor is a great starting point. And I think it's really interesting, and I always talk about this, is I think we are much further ahead with coaching mentality in sports than we are in business.
Yeah.
There is still some of this. Well, why have they got a coach? Are they failing within business? Whereas you would never turn around and look at an elite sportsman and say, well, why have they got a coach? You know exactly why they've got a coach. It's to get themselves better, to develop. And actually, that's what coaches are within businesses. It's not about failure. It's about potential.
Exactly. It's about developing people.
Yeah.
And what I love about our American friends, I don't, given the time of the day, I don't think too many have dialed in. But it's very common to have a coach and a therapist, and it's just part of people's life to develop themselves. I mean, obviously, the personal development industry is a lot bigger. I mean, it's a bigger country as well.
Yeah.
But I still work with people in therapy, for instance. They go like, therapy, it's still kind of like, that's for the crazy people, right? That's that's not for me. And I thought that for a long time. And obviously, as part of my training, I had to have therapy as well. And it's so useful, and it's completely different to coaching.
Yeah. So what would you say should be the first steps in securing a coach for your needs? What would that be?
So I think, and I use the analogy from therapy again. It's about the personality. It's about the relationship. So meeting a coach, if I say go window shopping, read a few profiles, and then start talking to a few and see who you think you want to work with, because it's a relationship you're building, right? Can you work with that person, if I say day in, day out? I mean, depending how many sessions and cadence you have. But the relationship, and it's the same with therapy, the relationship is paramount. So if you don't get, if I say, along with the person, the second bit is, and that's where, if I say I'm too hearted, but has the person done the job themselves? Because part of that, coming back to our discussion around mentoring, is for mentors, you need that person to have done that job before, right? Because otherwise that person can't help you. With coaching, it's actually not as essential, right? I can coach anyone to become better in whatever they do without having the background knowledge. But it often helps people to ease into coaching if they know that person has had experience in that field. And that's a double-edged sword for us, I think, between mentoring and coaching. I don't know how you see that.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually think, I'm very much a coach-led with some mentoring. Although I have worked in senior leadership within large multinational organizations, sometimes when I'm coaching someone in a business I know nothing about, I get asked great questions because I'm really curious. As coaches, which is why we talked about coach supervision, talked about it with Mike a few weeks ago in the Conversation Hub. So catch up with it is why it's so important for us to have supervisors.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I would always ask coaches, do you have supervision? Because it then proves that they are looking after their professional and ethical development.
Yeah.
And you cannot be part of an ICF, the MCC, or Apex if you do not have that supervision.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it is. It's, and I think that's why it's really important to understand what the difference between coaching and mentoring is.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm coaching, I will encourage someone to get a mentor internally. As Volker, you and I both are external coaches. I know organizations have internal, but we're both external coaches, which I think helps, with the trust.
Yeah.
Because we're not in the business.
Yeah, we bring in that outside view. And as you say, there's curiosity, right, of understanding. Because the danger is if you hire someone who's done it before and has been in your position, that person might just automatically fall more into a mentoring position. And that's why I'm saying some of the sales leadership coaching becomes mentoring, because I am and I was and I have been in these positions.
Yeah.
So that's where, if I say, obviously offer executive coaching as well and leadership coaching. And I don't want to say, I have to be careful who's listening, right? If I say I enjoy more working with people where I don't know what they're doing, because it is a discovery process. And you bring a fresh pair of eyes, no doubt, especially if you are external, because that's so important, because you look at it with if I say ambiguity and curiosity, and you're asking questions that other people might not ask because they are familiar with that situation.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where, and that's, if I say, where I'm always astonished when I work with senior people. I often go back to value exercise, if I say the basics, and that's because people never done it. They never sat down and go like, I don't actually know what I want. I'm just here, I'm doing my job, and I don't know why. And then you're peeling back these layers, right? And that's the fun, and it's totally rewarding. I mean, that's why I love it.
And as usual, Volker, we've wandered off from that initial question, which actually also happens in coaching. I always encourage my coachees to come in with an end in mind.
Yeah.
So what does good look like at the end of this session, at the end of these series of sessions? And actually, it's always a really interesting journey to get there. It is very well. I don't think I've ever had someone that's gone from here to here. We've had a little wander through the woods before we've got to where we are, because actually what we thought was impacting us maybe wasn't.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. Trust and chemistry with your coach is so important. If you don't trust your coach, if you don't have chemistry, if you don't have psychological safety, you are never going to show vulnerability.
Yeah.
And to really get the most out of coaching, you have to have that vulnerability to share all that stuff, the psychological safety stuff, rewarded vulnerability.
Yeah.
Move forward.
You need to open up, right?
Mm.
And again, that's where some people might mistake coaching for therapy, right? By opening up and showing their feelings and going deep. But
Yeah.
therapy is a different level, right? But that's
Mm.
where sometimes coaching sessions can feel like therapy to some, right? Because
Yeah.
some people never open up, and
Yeah.
vulnerability is, and since I say reading the book by Brené Brown and obviously watching her TED talk, I
Yeah.
always recommend people watch the TED talk, Brené Brown, vulnerability. It's just beautiful,
Mm.
I mean, we can talk about emotional intelligence again. I know we just did that last week, but it's part and parcel of what we do,
Mm.
right? It's the empathy, it's looking at someone's feeling, understanding someone's feelings, and what makes them tick.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's, for a coach to come in with, right, what is my ending goal? What is my end goal? What does that look like? What does the great look like? We need to have a goal or a series of goals. And then we take the pathway there. So it's beginning with that trust, but having a really good idea of what good looks like, or, it may be a question as simple as, what thing, if we could solve in this session, would make the biggest impact?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a big thing, and it usually isn't.
Yeah. No, I know, like that, and as you say, right, we always think if I say success goes from A to B in a straight line.
Yeah.
And coaching goes, oh yeah, just hire a coach and off we go, right? And tomorrow I'll be better. It doesn't work like that, right? There's always a zigzag. We've all seen these zigzag and curves, and that's the beauty. I mean, that's life essentially, right?
Yeah.
And again, where I know a lot of coaches that are, if I say, trained in solution focus based coaching, but where it really comes from is solution focus based or brief therapy, SFBT, and it's about what is this this magic question which opens everything up, right? And that's that's the questions you want to ask, and that's where I say you bring elements of therapy in to the coaching world to I don't want to say expose vulnerability, but you ultimately expose vulnerability because a lot of people haven't opened up before, and to really understand, if you want to achieve that goal, I often say that because a lot of people think, oh, what else do I have to learn? What else do I have to do? What else do I have to add to my toolbox, right? But sometimes you have to unlearn things, right? You have to shed some of your weight in order to move forward. A lot of people keep forgetting that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What am I carrying with me?
Yeah.
And, what am I carrying with me that I don't need to? And I always talk about my imposter syndrome. So when I got to director within an organization, I had that imposter syndrome moment, whatever we want to call it, called imposter syndrome, whatever we want to call it. My imposter syndrome's name is Doris. She's a little old blue rinse lady that has a massive carpet bag full of stuff that she doesn't need to bring with her. And she comes to visit me sometimes. And one of the things that I had coaching was to unpack why I was bringing Doris with me.
Yeah.
And actually understanding that also enabled me to do that. So I think what we also need to sort of mention is coaching is not comfortable. So when you come to coaching, it's not a lovely little chat about some stuff. You're probably going to feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because actually what we're doing is asking those curious questions. Some might be, I describe myself as kindly challenging.
Yeah.
Are you being brave enough? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So having those open, honest, uncomfortable conversations, because we know growth comes from that uncomfortableness.
Yeah. there needs to be a willingness to grow, right, from the coachee
Yeah.
perspective, right? I mean, you wouldn't hire a coach if you didn't want to grow, because again, if you want to sort something out in your life, that is in the past, go and get a therapist. If you want to grow, and as you say, right, you grow by going into the uncomfortable space, right? There's a space you haven't been before, going into the frontier, whatever that means for you, and everyone starts off at different levels. So that's I guess why imposter syndrome is, if I say quotation mark, popular, right, when you get to coaching. Right? I have everything is imposter, and but what does imposter actually mean? Right? It's and unpacking that can be a few sessions just for someone to realize, oh, actually, it's not imposter I have, it's something completely different. I just call it an imposter syndrome because that's a popularized term, right? It's what we all use when we describe situation. But it can mean so many different things. So for you, it's Dorothy, right? So
yeah, good old Doris. It's still good old Doris. She turns up with a carpet bag full of stuff. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, that uncomfortableness, I recognize that.
Yeah.
We never grow unless we feel uncomfortable. So get a coach that will kindly challenge you.
Yeah.
If that's what you need. And it is recognizing what you need and going back to that chemistry stuff that we talked about is we need to have chemistry to build trust. And actually everything doesn't happen in the session. So as a coach, you need to go out and take the actions you've agreed in that session before the next session.
Yeah. So the homework bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to say, in the hour or whatever we have is, and we've sorted it all. It's the starting point of action. So for me, the hour of coaching is around having space and time to think.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said at the beginning, Volker, about we're so busy doing, we very rarely stop to think about why we're doing it, how we're doing it, what impacts it's making to us, to our team, to the business.
Yeah.
And then going and taking action.
And it's so interesting what you're saying as well, because I'm just reflecting from my perspective as well, right? Because therapy, for instance, is a lot cheaper than coaching, right? And if you look at therapy, you do the session, you don't write a follow-up. There's not homework in between. There's not, there's obviously preparation before each session. But coaching, to your point, it's different, right? There's so much more work involved in terms of follow-up emails, following through the contact between sessions in terms of WhatsApp support, email support, right? You're as a coach, you're alongside the client for the whole way, and then you have these contact hours, and that could be 2 a month, that could be 4 a month, that could be 1 a month, depending what you agree. And these are the sessions where you think things through, whilst the actual change happens in between the sessions. But you're always there as a coach. If I say you never get a day off, and to prepare for these sessions and ongoing support takes actually a lot more time than it does for mentoring or for therapy. And people often forget that. Coaching is not like a one-off session and then I see you in 4 weeks' time, or I'll see you next week. There's a lot more involved from our end.
But I'm talking about the coachee, not the coach necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
So the coachee needs to take action. Yeah. So for me, it's the coachee has to own this. The agenda for these sessions is always driven by the coachee.
Yeah.
Always. Always driven by the coachee. So, the questions and the contract at the beginning is always about what they need from this session.
Yeah.
What good looks at the end of, or what has happened by the end of this session. And then moving forward to when they leave that room, it is not well, it's done and dusted, lovely, I'll see you in a month. There is action that needs to be taken.
Yeah. And
in
there
that
can be check-ins, etc.
time.
Yeah.
So it's with them to do that, because ultimately coaching tends to be a shorter term relationship than a mentor relationship. It's usually there for a small period of time to get someone to reach their full potential, to understand a little bit more about themselves and how they can turn up in a better way for everyone.
Yeah.
And they can reach their full potential. I know what I'm getting up for every morning. It's in supporting people to release their passion and potential.
Yeah.
And make the biggest impact.
No, absolutely. And the reason I put the spotlight a little bit on our work as well is because a lot of people don't see that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
You're absolutely right. The coachee has to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Because we just, coming back to the sports analogy, right?
Yeah.
We're literally there all the time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be a sprinter. I definitely wouldn't be a sprinter. but I can help the sprinter to become a sprinter, right? So that's and that's the hard work, right? We're just there to, I don't know if handhold is a nice expression, but it can be, but we're on their side, and that's important bit, and that can be, we need to be prepared for whatever the coachee brings.
Yeah.
I know we only have a few minutes left. I think important is also to look at things. How do you measure actually progress and success, right? Because you said coaching is a short term engagement. Mentoring can be longer. Therapy usually can be quite long. Can be years. But even coaching, I think, can be years, right? Or it can be like a few months, then it stops for a few months, and you go back. So, or it's ongoing, and again, it obviously depends on the person. But you want to track as well in terms of, as you said, it's so important to set the goals, right? What do you want to achieve with your coach, and how do you know you achieved that? What has changed in yourself or in your life that things that you wanted to have actually been achieved? So how do you measure success is important as well.
Yeah. And with the best of the world, if we're working with organizations, they need to see return on investment.
Yeah.
And that will be clearly signposted by better performance usually. Is the outcome of it. But I'm really conscious we've got 2 minutes left. Thank you for your question, Michael. He right at the beginning said, could we talk a little bit about chemistry? I think we've talked about that throughout.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, if you are looking to work with a coach, make sure you pick the right coach for you, for what you want in the moment. Be open and be able to be vulnerable. So pick someone you can trust. Have an idea of the end in mind. Where are you trying to get to? Be prepared to feel uncomfortable and maybe try things that you haven't done. And you do need to put the work in between the sessions to enable yourself to move forward.
Yeah. And I think that is such an important point, right? If you want to have coaching and you want to develop yourself, you have to put the work in.
Absolutely.
If you're not ready to do that, don't waste your time or money on a coach. Simple as that, right? If you don't want to develop yourself, don't get help, basically.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. Appreciate it. If you've got any comments, or if you have anything else that you would like to feedback to us, or you'd like to see in the Conversation Hub, please let us know and go to cultureworksconsortium.com and put any suggestions in there. Thank you.
Thank you. And reach out for any questions you have.
Yeah. Bye.